Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for this morning's session. We're looking at I suppose, quite a bit of a niche area today. So Sage 50 accounts, and it's the foreign trader option we're looking at. I will try and cover sort of dealing with foreign currencies when you're not using the foreign trader as well. So we'll try and compare the two during the session today. Session should last around about the 45-minute mark. I've run this one before, but it has been a while, so we'll just try and go through it in a sort of a logical order. Right, now, just before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. So as usual, you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you've got one, it will be muted. So any questions that you have for us today, you'll need to pop them into the questions panel. Not many of you on the session this morning, so good opportunity for you to pop your questions in and get them answered. To submit your questions or your comments for that matter, all you need to do is just click that little speech bubble icon, which is on your taskbar on the right. Give it a click, you'll then have access to that box in the bottom right-hand corner. So any questions, comments, pop them in there. Remember to click send, otherwise we'll not see them. And obviously they'll just pop up on our screens, and we'll try our best to get an answer to you. We're joined today by Matt. Matt will be in the background supporting me today with the questions that you submit. So I'm sure from memory from this session when we run it in the past, I'm sure there'll be some weird and wonderful questions as well. So if we can't answer them on this session, what I will do is just drop you an email later today once I've had a chance to look at that. If anyone wants a copy of the slides that we're using today, you can do that. Do take the opportunity during the session to click that little icon on your taskbar. There's two options available as normal. There's the standard full color slides that we're using, and also there's where you've got the color stripped out, what we term the print friendly version. They're not detailed steps by any stretch of the imagination, so we always say that. The detailed information, if you want it, the step-by-step guides, that type of thing, you'll find that available in our help centre. However, what you will receive today as well is a follow-up email, and that follow-up email will have the usual recording of today's session. So if you need a bit of a recap, you want to work through it again or at your own pace, or maybe you want to follow it through in your software, then just watch out for that. You'll receive that email around about an hour after we finish. There'll also be links on that email so you can register for future webinars. Now, our timetable currently runs up to the week before Christmas at the moment. We then have a bit of a 2-week break from webinars, and then we'll be starting again in the new year. The ones from January and February, we expect probably to have those available to register for by the end of next week. So do watch this space. There'll also be a link to our recordings, so if you want to take advantage of the webinars, maybe you've got a bit of a quieter period during Christmas, if that does exist, then you could use the recordings as well. It's a good way to utilise the webinar service. Anyway, we'll get stuck in. So, but do keep your questions and your comments coming. So what are we covering today? Well, we're going to start with a little bit of an introduction to the foreign trader option. Mention a little bit about availability to you as well. We'll then run through a series of demonstrations, so setting up what that looks like. So if you've never touched it yet, how you go about switching that on essentially, and just generally setting up your software, so setting up your records, your customers, suppliers, bank records, your currencies list. We'll look at entering transactions, and you'll be able to see how that differs, which is not a great deal, to be quite honest, other than that you're entering transactions in the foreign currency where applicable. And when you do that, you'll need to make sure that you enter the appropriate exchange rate as well. Now, getting onto I suppose, the more complex side of that, and some people, if your maths isn't brilliant, some people do question this, and it can be a little bit confusing, which is where the recording comes in as well. And it's when we get onto things like exchange rate revaluation and also foreign bank account revaluation as well. So two important things that need to happen in the background when you're entering transactions. If you can get your head around those options, then the rest of it's really straightforward. But some people do question that and the way it works. But we'll try and come up with a simple example as well, so you can see how that works and why it's doing what it does. Just at the end, we'll explain more about the additional support, and obviously we'll pick up on any questions that are outstanding as well. So as I say, keep them coming. We'll try our best to pick them up during the session, but if they are very complex, I'll just pick them up afterwards. Anyway, so let's get stuck in. And just as an introduction to the foreign trader module. Now, it is a separate module. I say a separate module. It's something that needs to be enabled within your software. And once it is enabled, it means that trading with your overseas customers and suppliers, it makes it really straightforward. So if you're invoiced in a foreign currency, you're not necessarily sat there with a calculator trying to work out what the equivalent value is. So if you are just doing it manually currently, if you were invoiced for, let's say, 100 euros, you'd be sitting there with your calculator trying to work out what that is in your base currency. And you'd only be able to enter in your base currency unless you're using the foreign trader module. So this makes it quite straightforward, and you'll see that in the demonstration today. Now, you can set up foreign currency records for your customers, suppliers, and bank accounts. And it means that when dealing with those, virtually everything is then in the relevant currency that you specify. So when you're dealing with a customer, it means, or a supplier for that matter, it means when you're talking or you're querying sort of balances on your account, the activity on your account, you're essentially talking the same numbers then. So, if you've been invoiced for 100 euros, when you look at your supplier activity, you would actually see 100 euros. You're not seeing just the value that you calculated to key it into your accounts. So you're essentially talking the same set of figures. So as I say, you can set your foreign currency records up for customers, suppliers, and bank records. We'll see that in a moment. You can produce documents such as invoices, orders, statements in the relevant currency. You can obviously enter foreign currency transactions. And all you need to do when you do that, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. So you enter your foreign currency transaction, you apply an exchange rate, and Sage does the rest for you. So it does all the mathematics behind the scenes, utilizing the exchange rate to work out what your base currency equivalent value is. And it will automatically calculate the exchange rate difference if there is one, and it will post the adjustment for you as well. And that's I suppose that's the difficult bit that sometimes people struggle to get their head around. I've included a link to the guide from our help center, so if you have downloaded the slides, that will work for you. Obviously easy to find anyway. I'll be touching on the help center a little bit later on. Right, okay, let's get stuck in then. So actually, just before I do that, I must mention availability-wise. I nearly forgot. So if you're on the professional level of the software, the foreign trader option, it's actually included as part of your subscription. So it's something that if you want to, you can switch on within your software. It's not something that you can switch off. So once it's on, it's on. You might never use it, but it is switched on and you can't switch that off. If you're on Essentials or Standard, it's not included as part of your subscription, and instead there would be a case of updating your subscription to add that in. There's information available. Again, I've included the link to the Sage shop. I believe when I looked the other day, it's about £13 a month to add the foreign trader option into your software. And I believe that is for your software. So if you've got multi-company installation, it would obviously, it's just a case of you would update your license and that option should be available in each of your companies at that point. Now, the foreign trader module, it's been around since 2013. So it's been around for actually prior to that. I say 2013 in that in its current form. It's been around since 2013, so quite some time. Prior to that, there were limitations. For instance, it didn't work if you were on cash accounting prior to 2013. It wouldn't let you enable it, but these days it will work for that VAT scheme as well. Anyway, we'll get stuck into some demonstrations in just a second. To enable the foreign trader module, all we need to do is we'll go into Tools, Activation. I'm using the professional level of the software today, so you'll see that. So Tools, Activation, and then it's just a case of enabling foreign trader, and it will launch the foreign trader setup wizard just to guide you through that process. Really simple wizard, that one as well. There's just a couple of things it's going to prompt you for. As you can see, there's only 3 steps. We'll then look at sort of setting up the software as well, so looking at the currencies list and the various records. Now, one thing to be aware of is that if you've already got customer suppliers or bank accounts, so let's say you're not using foreign trader so far, but you've got a bank account set up on your bank accounts list, and that's the one you use, what you call your dollar account, for instance. And what you do every time you enter a transaction, you sit there with your calculator. You might use the inbuilt one in Sage, but let's say you sit there with your calculator and you would work out what $1,000, that's, we'll say £800, and you key in that. So if an account already has activity against it, and that goes for customer suppliers or your bank accounts, then you cannot switch currency for that account. What you would need to do is set up an alternative one, but we'll come on to that one in just a moment. Anyway, let's switch across to my screen. We'll start working through a bit of a demo. Again, keep your questions coming. If you want to interrupt me with your comments or your questions, please do. I'll try and pick them up as best I can. Right, anyway, we're in the software. As I say, well, as you can see from the top here, we're logged into the professional version of the software. Now, it's actually version 31 that I'm using today. If you're thinking, oh, I'm just on version 29, or I'm on version 30 or 30.1. Version 31 is now available. You can download that. The link, you'll find it on our help center. You'll certainly start hearing loads about that in the new year as well. But probably one thing you will notice is that the core software itself doesn't really look any different. A lot of the benefits in version 31 are to do with almost like paving the way for new connected services that you're going to have access to in the new year. Anyway, we're in Sage 50 Accounts Professional, so that means I've got the option to switch on Foreign Trader. At the moment, if I go into my customers list, I'll just choose this one that I've got called Sterling Customer. And if I look at defaults, you'll see that the currency option, it's grayed out at the moment. So I can't switch currency. It just picks up my whatever I've got flagged as the base currency. It would have asked you for that when you first set up your software. Right, let's just close out of that. Now, to switch on Foreign Trader, as I mentioned, we go to Tools, Activation, and then you have an option, Enable Foreign Trader. So just usual confirmation window because I've got something open in the background. And then it launches the Foreign Trader Setup Wizard. So as I mentioned, there's just a couple of steps in here. So first one, step 1, is just a welcome message. Just gives you a little bit of spiel about what you can do with it. So we're just going to click Next. We're then prompted with 2 options. Now, first one is the revaluation nominal code. So when there are foreign currency discrepancies, so differences between sort of the invoice and the payment value because of the exchange rate, then it needs to post the adjustment, and it will do that to whatever nominal code you've got specified here. Now, by default, it picks up nominal 7906. If you needed to change that, if you've got something else set up, you can just click on the drop down and select it from the list. Otherwise, you'll probably find that that's set up already for you. You maybe even looked at it on your nominal ledger and thought, when am I going to use that? You may have been using it for manual adjustments currently as well. So 7906 is the default. Next, we've got the update method. There are 3 options on this drop down. And what this is used for, the top one is the default. What it's used for is when I enter transactions in a foreign currency. So let's say I choose US dollars, and maybe I've got that set up as, let's say I've got the exchange rate set up as 1.2. And then I go to enter my next transaction for dollars, and actually the exchange rate is slightly different. So we'll say, let's just say 1.3 for the sake of argument. Now, when I do that, it'll recognize that you've entered something other than what you've currently got set. And you'll see this when we're entering transactions in the demo. So if that's the case, do you want it to prompt you to save that exchange rate change to the currencies list? Do you want it to, so it's going to say, right, exchange rate is different. Do you want to update this on your currencies list or not? It'll give you a yes or a no option. Second option is almost similar, but it's just going to do it automatically in the background. It's going to, if you key in it slightly different exchange rate, you tend to find that that's what most people go for once you've started using Foreign Trader. I would encourage you to stick with the top option to begin with, just till you get used to it. But that second option, it tends to be what you'll change it to going forward. So if you do pop in a different exchange rate, it's going to say, it's not going to then prompt you each and every time. It'll just save the update. And the final option is to not bother with that, because it will bring up the exchange rate each time you enter a transaction anyway. So it will give the option to key it in there and then. So never save any exchange rate changes. So you can change the method afterwards if you want to, but just for the sake of argument, and so that you can see where that prompt does appear, and potentially, let's use the phrase how annoying it can be. So we're going to leave it set to that top one. So we'll just click next. Get nothing to specify on step 3. It's just telling us a little bit of information about it, and then we just click finish. Now at this stage, I don't notice anything any different. However, if I go into settings, I do have access to the currencies table. I would have had access to the currencies table anyway, but it's now essentially I've got all the currencies that I can possibly need. So you've got all the way from number 1. It is based around the number as well, so it doesn't matter what description you pop in or exchange rates. So if you've got number 1 set to pounds sterling, you might find for whatever reason yours is different. The only thing that you need to make sure on this currencies list is that in the exchange rate, whatever is your base currency, that's what you've got it set to. So Great British pounds, or pounds sterling, mine is set to base. You see the exchange rates against the others are all 0 at the moment because I've just literally activated it. So it goes all the way from 1, and if I scroll all the way to the bottom, you've got number 100. So you can have up to 100 different currencies. Now, I've never come across anyone that's needed more than that. Maybe if you were the post office or something like that, for foreign exchange counter or something like that, or you buy and sell currencies. But I've never come across a business that uses more than 100 currencies. Now, if you sell abroad, but actually all of your customers, you still sell in pounds sterling, for instance, then you don't need to enable Foreign Trader for that. It's where you specifically need to operate in a foreign currency in addition to your base currency. So we've got some set. What you'll find is that the 3 most common ones are at the top. So pound sterling, US dollar, and euro, they're the top 3. After that, you've just got from 4 onwards, we've got some of the more common ones. You should just find they're in alphabetical order from that point. Probably some currencies on there that you think, oh, what on earth is that one? If you need to amend one, so let's just, if you don't trade with Argentinian peso, for instance, and you want to use something else, maybe you want to promote one of the ones that was down at the bottom. So let's say you deal with a Hong Kong dollar, for instance, and you want that to be higher up the list. You can do that as long as you haven't really used Argentinian peso. So again, it relates to the currency number. It ignores things like descriptions, essentially. Now, if I wanted to do that, what I could do is just highlight whatever it is. So if it's a currency that's not listed, I can highlight say number 4 on the list, I could click edit, and I could go in and change the currency name, the currency code, the currency symbol. Obviously, some of them are quite hard to find to get them typed in. But if you have a look online, just do a quick Google search. Actually, other browsers are available as well. Do a quick, search engines, I should say. Do a quick search of the internet on what keyboard strokes you'd need to use to get your relevant currency symbol in there. It's then a case of popping in the relevant exchange rates and just typing in whatever the major currency unit is and the minor currency unit. And then you would obviously just come in and you would just okay that. It'll pop it on the list for you. Now I'm just going to use the top 3 today. I don't want to overcomplicate things by using a million currencies. So we got pound sterling set as our base currency. You'll find if I click edit, I can't really change anything on that one. Obviously, got your standard descriptions, but things like value-wise, it's always an exchange rate of it'll be set to 1 because that's your base currency. Now, what actually happens in the background when you enter transactions, when you've got foreign trader enabled, is that every time you enter a transaction, it records it in the foreign currency, but also the base currency. Now, if you imagine I enter bank payment for £100, the value that I've keyed in is classed as the foreign value, so 100, and the base currency, it would calculate what that should be. And because I've entered it in base currency, it would use that exchange rate of 1 to 1. So you've got the 2 values recorded for each transaction. If I'd entered it, let's say $1,000, that's the foreign value. The base would use that exchange rate to calculate what that is. So each transaction essentially has 2 recorded values, the foreign and the base. So that's how it's working behind the scenes. Now for US dollars, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop an exchange rate in. Now I like to use nice round figures here. So actually what I'm going to do, I'll type in 1.2. So you've got up to 6 decimal places for your exchange rate. When I pop that in, if you're dealing with US dollars and euros, generally the rule of thumb is that what you'll be keying in, just to make sure you get it the right way around, is it's going to be higher than 1. Sometimes they adjust, but for both of these, I'm just going to key in 1.2. Now you'll see when I do that as well that it does do what you term a reverse exchange rate as well. So in this case, we're saying it's 1.2 euros to the pound. And obviously the reverse is 0.833333 pounds sterling to the euro. And that's all I need to do at this stage. Just close that. Don't even have to put anything in there if I don't want to, because I will be able to key in the exchange rates when I key in the transactions. For now, we're just going to close out of that list. Next, we're going to go into customers. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you've got an account that has activity on it, you can't just go into a customer record or a supplier record or a bank record for that matter and switch the currency. It won't let you. If it's got no activity, then you will be able to do that. So if I just stick on my Sterling account first of all, pop into defaults, and you'll see that, well, there's no activity on this one. So the currency drop down is now active, where it was grayed out earlier. So we'll just leave that one as is. Don't need to save any changes for that one. For my Euro customer, pop into that one, again into defaults, and I'll switch that one to Euro and save it. And then finally, my US dollar customer. Let's try that one again. Obviously named them to make them a little bit easier to recognize. So back into defaults, and again, we'll choose US dollar. So we'll save that one. So those are now switched. they've got the relevant currencies associated with them. Suppliers works in exactly the same way. So a euro supplier, I've got nothing on the account, so it will let me change it. And finally, my dollar supplier. And we'll save that one as well. Now you'll see there's a currency column there. Obviously, if I wanted to, I should be able to go, let's see if it's there. Let's see if I can spot it on the list. Does it let me display that or not? No, it doesn't let me display it for customers, but you're probably more likely to deal with foreign currency suppliers, and that's the example I'm going to be showing you today as well. Finally, bank accounts. So when you enable foreign trader, you'll actually have these extra columns. So it's no longer just going to show you the balance on the account that you've had when it was base currency only or single currency. You've now got this base balance, you've got the foreign balance, and you've got the currency code. Now you can see they're all set to GBP so far because I haven't changed any of them. But again, what I'll do is I will go into the bank record and choose the currency. So this is my US dollar account. Close out of that one. You'll see the currency code changes, and we'll do it for our euro account as well. Right, so that's the basics of the setup. So we went into Tools, Activation, enabled the Foreign Trader option, worked through that wizard. We went into Settings, Currencies, made sure we've got the currencies available that we want to work with. And then we amended our customers, suppliers, and also the bank accounts. Now, just going back very quickly to, let's say you've got a supplier set up where maybe you've traded in euros, but actually because you haven't been using foreign trader, everything you've entered so far is in pound sterling. So if you're in that position, what you would do is you would need to set up a new account for that. Now you can either just click new, start keying it in, or if you're on the professional level, you could highlight one of your existing supplier, and then you could use duplicate, and it would create a new record for you based on the original. Obviously, because that would be a new account, it would have no activity, and you make whatever changes you want. And just a case of saving it. The original account, I would then maybe rename that to something like do not use or old account, something along those lines. Right, any questions so far? I'm going to pop back to the slides, but do keep your questions and your comments coming. So I'll find the right button. There we go. So next, we're going to take a quick look at entering transactions. So things like bank payments, receipts, invoices, batch transactions, so invoices and credits, and also I suppose the important one, customer receipts and supplier payments. So we'll run through a couple of examples just so you can see what that looks like. Right. Now, what you will notice when we do go into certain screens, so if I go into bank accounts, if I'm just in a sterling account and we choose the likes of, let's say, a bank payment, you'll see that because it's sterling, that's my base currency. I've got the exchange rate at the top, but it's just one. If I was to choose a foreign currency bank account, you'll see that the exchange rate becomes active. I'm hoping pronouncing your name right. So you're just quickly mentioning there, which tax code should you use for foreign clients and suppliers? So it very much depends where they are. There's not a definitive one for that one. Have a look on our help center, that would guide you through. But even then, even if you're just trading within Europe, for instance, the tax code that you would use would be things like, it depends on its product or it's a service. Would it be classed as standard rated? zero rated? Very much depends. You would put in the default of the one that you're most likely to use, but each time you will be able to override that. There's nothing has changed in that respect. But there is a good guide within our help center on which tax code should I use. Right, so all we've got here is when we select the relevant bank account, we enter, obviously in this case it's the dollar bank account. The only thing that's any different when we do that, you'll notice that the columns where we've got values, so the net column, the tax column, the gross column, we've now got the relevant currency symbol. And we've also got that exchange rate. The exchange rate is pulled through from that currency table. That currency table doesn't integrate with anything online, by the way. So it'll be up to you if you want to update that manually. Obviously, there would be recommendations on HMRC's website if you need to backdate something as to what the exchange rate should have been. Or you may even have an agreed exchange rate with your customer or supplier. So it's just it would just be a case of keying it in at the top. Now, one thing you can't do is you can't enter multiple transactions on the same screen and use different exchange rates. It's just that one at the top. It would use that for each of the transactions that you key in. So if you do need to enter transactions that use different exchange rates or even different currencies for that matter, you would have to enter them individually. Right, I'll not enter one just yet. We'll come back to that one a little bit later. If I pop into, let's say, invoices and credits, and we choose a new invoice, you'll see probably won't notice anything any different just at this stage. But if we choose a customer, so if we choose a euro customer, the only thing that really changes, again, your currency symbols, and also you've now got the exchange rate at the top. So again, it pulls it through from the currencies table, but you will be able to override that if required. So you'll be able to key everything in. Everything at this stage, it's going to be in euros. So when I key in sort of the price, so it pulls through the price from the relevant product record, it would. And that would be exactly the same if you do a sales order, a purchase order, quotation, just about any other transaction as well. Now, the one I am going to show you is, I'm going to quickly enter a purchase invoice. So we'll pop into suppliers and I'll use this dollar account. So we'll choose a dollar supplier, pop into batch invoice. Just make sure we select them. I'm not concerned too much with dates at this stage, so I'll just pop that in though. I'll choose the first. Everything else just appears as normal. I'm going to pop in $100. Now, to avoid any complications with VAT at all, I'm just going to leave it set to T9 for the time being. Again, just going off that earlier query, which tax code should I use? If you're not sure, have a look within our help centre, or maybe speak to HMRC, see what the classification of a particular purchase should be. From that, we can then advise you, right, well, if it's like a zero rated purchase of a service from within Europe, for instance, you would use a specific code. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the exchange rate set as 1.2. It's just $100. It's on that US dollar account, and I'm going to save it at that point. Right. Now, at this stage, if I just quickly pop into transactions, you'll see that it lists the foreign gross. It was that $100. It lists the exchange rate. So we got here the net and tax. Now the net and tax in this instance is in base currency. if we pop into suppliers, and you can see on this list, we've got the two columns. We've got the balance. Balance is going to be in your base currency. Foreign balance is in the foreign currency. So it's worked out at the exchange rate of 1.2 when we entered $100. For us, that purchase would essentially, we've been invoiced for £83.33 in our currency that we use. So we've been invoiced for $100, but at the time, that $100 was valued at £83.33. Now, if we pop into the activity, just so you can see this, what we've got is on the activity initially, what we've got is we're viewing this in the foreign currency. So it's got the appropriate currency symbols. And if I wanted to, I can toggle. I've got this toggle button at the top, in this case, view in pounds. Now, if you're based in Ireland, that's going to say view in euros. So if I just toggle with it, and it then switches and it shows me that this is right in your accounts, in your base currency, this is what it looks like. So far we've been invoiced for £83.33, or in the foreign currency, we've been invoiced for $100. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay off that invoice. Now I'm going to say, right, I'm going to pay it with today's date, but actually I'm going to pay it with a different exchange rate. So we're going to say the exchange rate's fluctuated a bit. Now, if I pop into bank accounts, and if I just leave that sterling bank account selected for the time being, and I choose the supplier payment, and I choose the dollar supplier, I'll get a message. But it tells me the account reference you've selected is a different currency to the selected bank account, and I can't process that transaction using essentially a bank account on a supplier in this case that have different currencies. So I've got to match like with like. That's the key. Now, what may mean if you don't have, like in this instance, let's say you don't actually have a physical dollar bank account, then you would need to set one up, just so that you can show that being paid, and then you would do a transfer between the two relevant accounts, the two relevant bank accounts. So you've almost like got a dummy bank account in the foreign currency that acts as an extra step, as it were. But if I choose my dollar bank account and I choose that dollar supplier, then I would just complete the screen just as normal. Now I'm going to leave the date as today. I'll ignore the amount that in dollars for the time being. I'm just going to change the exchange rate. I'm going to change it slightly, so 1.18. And you'll see when I tab out of this field, I get that confirmation message. This is the one that when we were setting up Foreign Trader earlier, that we had the 3 update methods. And I said, right, I always want you to prompt me when I enter a different exchange rate to what's held in the currencies table. So it's just asking me, do you want to update the currencies list with this rate? And it doesn't matter what I choose at that point. So I'll just click yes. So at this stage, I'm working in dollars. I'm going to say I'm going to pay this $100 invoice. I'm going to pay that in full. Obviously, I could have clicked pay in full at the top, but I've just typed in the value. And then I'm going to save that. Now you'll see in this case, if I get back to the bank accounts list, the foreign balance in this instance is minus 100. We've made a payment of $100 only. But what we have done is in our base currency, so our base currency equivalent, that $100 that we've made that payment for has cost us, because of the exchange rate, it's cost us £84.75. So you've got the two listed. We'll come on to revaluation in a few minutes. What does it look like on the supplier? Well, the supplier is back to 0. So as far as the supplier is concerned, if we have a look at the activity, what we've got there is we've got an invoice for $100. and we've paid them $100. So as far as that US dollar supplier is concerned, it's a zero balance. Now, if I pop back to the slides for a moment, I just want to show you sort of what's happening in the background as well. So I've got a quick example, and it's to do with exchange rate revaluation. So if we'd entered the invoice, $100 at 1.2, the equivalent value of that was £83.33. When we've come to make the payment of $100, the exchange rate was 1.18. Sterling equivalent, £84.75. Now in this case, there's a difference there. It's not a difference in the foreign value. We invoiced 100, we paid 100. But if we were doing this manually, we would have entered originally, if let's say we weren't using Foreign Trader, we would have had to sit there with a calculator and we would have keyed in the invoice at £83.33. And then when we made our payment, we would have said, right, we're paying them $100. What's that based on the current exchange rate? We would have actually paid them £84.75, just to zero out the account. Now that means in the sterling equivalent value that the account doesn't balance. So what the software does, it will post an adjustment for the difference. A bit like if you were doing it manually, you'd be doing that. So because you've essentially overpaid it, what you'd need to do if you were doing it manually is you would post an additional invoice for the difference. If it worked out it was the other way, where you've paid them in the foreign value in full, but actually in your sterling value you've gained because actually you've paid less than what you were originally invoiced for, then in that instance what you'd need to do is post a credit note to balance the account. So the software is essentially going to do that for you. So that £1.42, so it has a zero foreign value, but it has a positive sterling value. So let's just look what that actually looks like in the software. So this is the activity on that supplier. We can see the $100 invoice, $100 payment. So that's it as far as the account is concerned. But if we switch to pounds, what we'll see is that we've got the invoice for 83.33, we've got a payment for 84.75, and then we've got the adjustment, what we term the currency revaluation transaction. So in this case, it's posted the purchase invoice for £1.42, and it will post that transaction. It will post it, showing it here at the bottom, to your nominal code 7906, where that was the one that was listed when we set up the foreign trader option. So all of your little adjustments when you're dealing with foreign currencies, they will automatically be posted to your exchange rate revaluation nominal code, that's 7906. Now I hope that makes sense. I've tried to keep that as simple as possible, other than I had a pence mentioned on the value. I didn't want the exchange rates to look too complex in that example. Right, again, keep your questions coming if you've got any. If you're not sure about something, pop them on there. Right, let's pop back to the slides, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to move on, and I want to talk a little bit about foreign bank account revaluation as well. Now you've got a wizard which guides you through this process, and again I've got a little example on why you might revalue. So the whole point of revaluing your bank account is that the foreign balance on that account, so let's just say it was $1,000, that will always be $1,000. It's not going to change when it's a dollar bank account. You've got $1,000 in it, it stays there. It doesn't matter about exchange rates. But in your accounts, for your base currency, the likes of your trial balance and your balance sheet, it needs to reflect the relevant value. So what is that $1,000 actually worth based on a specific exchange rate? So when you get to the end of, let's say, your financial month or quarter or 6 months or end of your financial year, you need to reflect that. You need to show that your foreign currency bank account, what its actually value is in your base currency. Now, when should you do it? It depends when you need to produce your financial reports. Most people would probably do this on a monthly basis. You mentioned there, I think it links in with this one as well. You mentioned there, do you need to do a periodic foreign revaluation on top of this automatic revaluation? Not for your customers or suppliers, you wouldn't do that. There's not an option for that, but there is for your bank account. So this is when you would maybe do this, if you're generating things like your trial balance, your balance sheet on a monthly basis, you would do this, run through this revaluation wizard again on that frequency before you do your management reports. So for those of you that, again, I'm sure some of you will be saying, I just don't get that. So I've got a little example here. So we're going to say we've got a dollar bank account, and I'm going to say in that bank account, I've got $1,000. And when I entered that on the 1st of October, the exchange rate was 1.25. So when you entered that transaction, you would have entered $1,000, and it would have recorded in the accounts that that $1,000 was worth £800. On the 10th of October, we introduced another $500, this time at the exchange rate of 1.18. So equivalent value, £423.73. 25th of October, another $500. Again, exchange rates, they do fluctuate, unfortunately. So 1.2, value of that one in sterling in your base currency, 416.67. Now, if we did nothing, as at the end of October, that foreign value, we've had 1,000 come in and 2 lots of 500. So we'd have $2,000 sat in the account. Adding up the base currency equivalents, we'd have £1,640.40. Now, let's say we've got no other activity as at throughout until the end of November, and we need to do our management reports. Now, let's say at the end of November, the exchange rate is actually 1.19. So if we were to essentially withdraw that or transfer that $2,000, what is it actually worth? What would we get for it? Yes, there may be charges and things like that, but let's just say, what is it currently worth when it's sat there in that bank account? So that $2,000 in sterling at an exchange rate of 1.19, we're going to say that's what it was at the end of November. Well, that would mean that the $2,000 is worth £1,680.67. So there's a discrepancy there, or a difference of £40.27. So nothing changed with regard to the foreign value, but the sterling value, this is why we need to revalue it. So actually, the value of that money coming in that we've posted it's actually gone up because of the exchange rates. So we've got a gain there of £40.27. Now, what I'll quickly do is I'm just going to go back to my screen. What I'll quickly do is I'm going to knock out all of the transactions so far. So you've probably never used this option before, but there's an option to rebuild, and I'm just going to knock out all of the transactions that I've posted so far. It'll still retain my other settings. So it's still going to retain the foreign currency settings and stuff like that that I've entered so far. But just to try and quickly show you how this works and why you need to revalue. So if I go into, I've got my bank account selected, and I'm going to post a bank receipt. So I'll do it as per that example. So we'll do 1st of October 2024. Nominal code, I'm not concerned about that in this example. And it was for $1,000. I've used T9 as well, just to keep things nice and simple. I don't want anything getting more complicated with random exchange rates. So we're going to say for this one, the exchange rate was 1.25. see if I can key that in, 1.25, put my number lock back on my keyboard, and just click yes to that, and I'll save that transaction. So £1,000 at 1.25. We'll save it. Right, I'm going to do the next transaction, and same bank account. I'm going to say 10th of October 2024. Pop in a nominal code, and this time it was for $500, but it was for a different exchange rate. So 1.18. Save that one. And then the final one, I think in the example we had the 25th. Just select it from the calendar this time. And again, that was for $500. And again, for a slightly different exchange rate. So this time it was 1.2. You see that message keep popping up now as well, every time I change that exchange rate. So we'll just quickly save that, close out. And what we can see is our foreign balance, $2,000, and our base balance, as per that example we had, it's showing us £1,640.40. This is where the revaluation wizard comes in. So we're going to say at the end of November that $2,000 is actually worth more because of the current exchange rate, or the exchange rate at the time. Just going to quickly pop back to the slide. If anyone's watching the clock, apologies for the slight overrun. We're going to be probably about another 4 minutes, so 4 or 5 minutes. So I want to talk quickly. I'm going to show you the revaluations. Now you'll see these within the bank record in just a moment, and we're going to run through the revaluation wizard now. It will list the revaluations you've done, so we'll see these in the software in just a moment. Let's get back to the screen. We'll quickly show you what the revaluation wizard looks like. So got my dollar bank account selected. I'm going to click foreign bank revaluation. You can access this in a few different areas, the revaluation wizard. You can access it within obviously the bank accounts list. You can access it by going into modules and then wizards, and you've got it on there as well, foreign bank revaluation. And also, if anyone actually uses the month end option, go to tools, period end, month end, you've got a little button to launch the wizard from within there as well. So they all launch the same thing. Anyway, back to bank accounts. I'm going to go into foreign bank revaluation. Choose your currency. So it'll only list the currencies that you've got bank accounts set up for. Obviously, you don't need to do anything with your base currency, so sterling isn't listed in my case. So US dollar. You may have more than one US dollar bank account selected as well. If you've got multiple accounts, I've only got the one. I'll select it, click next, pop in the date. So I'm going to say, right, as at the end of November, this bank account tells me it was $2,000. The base currency value is 1640.40. I'm going to say the exchange rate for this example. Find my notes. Yeah, it was 1.19. So I then click next, and it tells me, right, this is the original base currency balance, 1640.40. Your revalued balance based on that exchange rate of 1.19 is 1680.67. The revaluation amount, so the adjustment that it needs to post behind the scenes, £40.27. So I'm going to say, yeah, I want to post that. And that's it done. If I now go back to bank accounts, I've still got $2,000 in there, nothing changes with that one, that's the foreign currency balance, but I've now got a base balance of 1680.67. Hope that makes sense. Now you can see that revaluation as well. You'll have a new tab within the bank record. If I click into that one, you'll see it listed. You might have loads of these that you build up over time. You'll notice that it only shows the exchange rate when you first come in, and that's for speed. If it needed to show you the calculated balances, it would take a little bit longer to get in there. So if you need to see whatever the foreign balance was at the time, or the prior base balance, the revalued base balance, just click show balances at the top. It'll fill those figures in for you. Obviously, I've got virtually nothing entered in my account, so I've got 5 transactions so far. So it's really, really quick. So it then shows me the values. Now I've got an edit option. So if I'd done it with maybe the wrong exchange rate when I revalued it, I can go in and I can change that if needed. I can't change the date. If I've made a mistake with the date, then I'd need to highlight it and click reverse. It'll knock that out for me. But that's the basics of using Foreign Trader and Sage Accounts. Again, any questions, quickly pop them in there before we end the webinar. Right, we'll pop back to the slides. Just bring me to the end of the demo. Again, apologies for the slide overrun. If you've got those questions, pop them in there. I'll try and pick them up before we disappear. Remember, you will receive an email that will include a recording of today's session. So if you want to work through that, maybe you didn't quite grasp the concepts of what was happening in the background, then watch out for that. If you've got any questions, or obviously there's information in our help center. Help center is a great source of information. You can just press F1 when you're working in your software, or you can go to your help menu, choose help center, or literally open your web browser and just go to sage.co.uk/help. Loads in there, guides, webinars, videos. If you can't find what you're after, it'll prompt you for the area that you're in. Right, best way to get in touch with the support team. Sometimes it's via phone, sometimes via web chat. There's a number of options, but it'll prompt you which is the best for you. Right. With regard to webinars, this is what we've got currently planned in. So what's new? We just literally started the what's new in version 31 this week. So we'll be running, I think there's a couple of sessions for that next week and the week after. And also we'll be continuing those into the new year as well. Some great connected features that are going to be coming in 2025, so such as Copilot, Sage Connect, payment automation. You'll have heard of two-factor authentication as well. You may have been on webinars for that one already. That's already here, but it will become mandatory at some point in the new year. So again, get yourself along to these webinars just to keep your knowledge up to date. We've been recently running a correction series of webinars as well. So those, excuse me, those are just about coming to an end. We've got a couple of repeats left to go, but recordings are available if you've missed those. And also requests for 2025. What would you like to see us cover next year? So if you think of anything, add them to the exit survey or reply to any of the webinar emails as well. They'll come direct to myself. Now that does bring me to the end. I've got one outstanding question, which I'll bring up, I'll answer in just a moment. But for those of you about to leave, you're watching the clock, many thanks for coming along. Do take a minute to complete the survey. That should pop up as you leave. Greatly appreciated if you can do that. And the follow-up email will be with you in around about an hour's time. Now, the one question I've got outstanding, it's asking there, what currency values will be showing on the sales report? So invoices and credits by customer, the detailed one. Let's have a quick look. So if we pop into, actually I've got nothing on that one. I've just restored as well, haven't I? So what you'll find, it depends on the report itself. Let me just see if I can edit the reports. Is it going to show me in there? Or is it an invoices report you're referring to? Depends on the report itself. If you're looking at an activity, obviously it's going to show you your the foreign currency values. If you're looking at a the likes of a, let's just pick on a day books report as an example. So if I choose day books, what should we choose? Let's just actually we'll just choose any report. Doesn't really matter what it is. If we edit it and we get into the report itself, so where it says where you'd expect to see net amount, tax amount, gross amount, what you'd actually see if we hover over it, it tells me the variable then, the floating box. It says variable. It says audit split net amount. Now there are two types of variables that you're going to have. There's foreign audit split net amount, and there's, in this case, just hover over it, audit split net amount. So it depends on the report. So have a look at the report. I'm assuming it's therefore probably going to show in your base currency, but it very much depends on the report you're running. It would certainly be possible to amend that if needed. And it would just be a case of getting in touch with our support team if you needed a specific one that's in the foreign value. The thing that you'd need to be careful of is if you were running a report that has then a mixture of currencies. So let's say you had one customer which is in euros, one customer in dollars, you've got the foreign currencies displayed, the totals for the report aren't then going to work because it's going to try and add values together that use different currencies. So you just need to be a little bit careful with that one. Hope that explains that one for you there, Ewa. Right, I think we're ready just to end the webinar just at that point. Once again, many thanks for coming along. If you do think of anything, by all means, just drop me an email. You can reply to any of the webinar emails. They will be directed back to myself. But otherwise, if you're urgent and you need to speak to someone, get in touch with our support team. But if you can take a minute just to complete that survey, that should pop up as we end the webinar. That'd be greatly appreciated. So have a great weekend. Hopefully that you don't get blown away in Storm Dara. And hopefully we'll see you next week on some more webinars. Many thanks.